Every year, more than 1 million deer die on American roads. By morning, almost every one of them is gone, hauled off, buried, or left to rot on the shoulder. Nobody eats it. That's just the rule, and nobody really questions it. And yet, every autumn in Oregon, people line up for a permit to take that same meat home, cook it, and eat it for dinner. Free meat. Perfectly good protein just sitting there. So why does the rest of the country treat it like poison? Here's the part almost nobody knows about. Oregon didn't legalize this on a whim. In 2019, the state passed a law letting drivers salvage the deer or elk they just hit, as long as they call it in and get a permit within 24 hours. Within the first year, hundreds of people used it, not out of desperation, out of habit, curiosity, or just not wanting good meat go to waste. And Oregon isn't even the outlier anymore. More than half of U.S. states now allow some version of roadkill salvage. There's one detail buried in the data behind all of this that undercuts the whole disgust reaction, and we'll get to it. So what's actually stopping the rest of the country? Not biology. Psychologist Paul Rozin spent decades studying what he called contamination sensitivity, the gut-level feeling that something touched by death, decay, or filth stays tainted even after you clean it completely. It's the same reason a perfectly sterilized bedpan still feels wrong to eat soup out of. The object didn't change, your feeling about it did. Rozin even found that people rate juice as disgusting after a sterilized cockroach was dipped in it for a single second, then removed. Nothing was left behind. It didn't matter. And once you start looking, food taboos are everywhere. And most of them have nothing to do with actual safety. Hindus who'll go hungry before touching beef. Jewish and Muslim communities who won't go near pork. Most Americans who'd rather eat almost anything before trying horse. The French, who'll happily eat snails and frog legs, but recoil at the idea of eating a rabbit's cousin, the guinea pig, a delicacy across the Andes. None of it is really about nutrition, it's about identity. About drawing a line around what counts as us. Meanwhile, out past the highway shoulder, nature runs on a completely different rule. Turkey vultures and black vultures have adapted specifically to patrol roadsides because a fresh carcass is just calories, full stop. Nothing in a vulture's brain flags that meat as ruined. To them, a car is just a very efficient, very modern predator, and the roadside is a buffet line. But here's where it gets complicated. Roadkill isn't automatically safe just because it's free. Wildlife agencies that run these programs, including Oregon's, warn people to check the animal's eyes, joints, and organs before touching the meat and to skip it entirely if it's been dead more than a few hours in warm weather. So the caution isn't imaginary. It's just aimed at the wrong target. The risk was never the roadkill itself. It's the clock. And disgust isn't even the only thing keeping this meat off your plate. For most of the last century, taking a dead deer off the road was illegal in a lot of states for a completely different reason. Game wardens worried it was a loophole for poachers, since anyone caught with an out-of-season deer could just claim it wandered in front of their car. So the ban wasn't really about your stomach at all. It was about closing a legal gap, and the disgust just quietly grew up around the law afterward until the two got tangled together so tightly that people forgot which one came first, which is exactly what the town of Marlinton, West Virginia, figured out back in 1991 when it started hosting an actual roadkill cook-off. Chefs compete every year with dishes made from legally salvaged deer, squirrel, and occasionally raccoon, and thousands of people show up to eat it, not as a joke. As a genuine celebrated meal, judged and ranked like any county fair contest. Across the Atlantic, one man turned this into a decades-long personal project. Arthur Boyd, a retired vet in Cornwall, England, has eaten roadkill for more than 50 years, badger, fox, even the occasional hedgehog, and has talked about it openly with the BBC more than once. He's not sick, he's not starving, he's just a man who decided the meat on the roadside wasn't actually garbage. Here's the uncomfortable question underneath all of it. If the meat is safe and the animal died fast in the wild, without ever seeing the inside of a feedlot, what exactly are we protecting ourselves from? Nobody's fully sure how to answer that honestly, because the discomfort was never really about food safety at all. Marvin Harris, the anthropologist who spent his career mapping food taboos across cultures, argued that almost none of them are really about health. They're about drawing a boundary around what a society is willing to recognize as food and what it needs to call waste or something worse, so it doesn't have to look at it too closely. Remember that detail buried in the data? In the years Oregon's Salvage program has run, the state's wildlife agency hasn't linked a single confirmed illness back to the meat, not one. The thing everyone assumes is dangerous has so far hurt nobody. The line between food and trash turns out to be thinner than it feels and pushed almost entirely by habit, not biology. Every generation, that line moves a little. Sushi was considered dangerous and strange in America 50 years ago. Insects are already a normal protein source in dozens of countries. Lobster, of all things, used to be prison food in colonial New England, fed to inmates because it was considered too disgraceful to serve anyone else. Now it's the most expensive thing on the menu. Roadkill might just be next. Not because it changed, but because we did. Meanwhile, most of the meat sitting in your own fridge right now came from an animal that spent its life in a crowded barn, standing in its own waste and never once saw the outdoors. That deer on the shoulder of the interstate lived wild, ate what it wanted, moved through actual forest, right up until the second it didn't. If disgust were actually about welfare, and not about a story we've told ourselves for so long, we stopped noticing it was a story. It's not obvious which one should really turn your stomach. Back in Oregon, the permit line still forms every October. Not because anyone's desperate. Because a few hundred people decided the old rule wasn't really a rule, just a habit nobody had bothered to check. And to be clear, nobody's asking you to go dip your dinner in bedpan-adjacent territory. Just to notice how much of what disgusts you is actually dangerous, and how much of it is just a story you never got around to questioning. If you like pulling on threads like this, the ones hiding behind stuff everyone just assumes, there's a lot more of them we haven't gotten to yet.